Hello, and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Giordano, and today I'm sitting down with Jessica Mons, co-founder of iOverlander and co-author of several ebooks and the Life Remotely blog. Jessica shares her experiences traveling the Pan American Highway with her husband and brother over a decade ago, how the trip sparked the beginnings of iOverlander, and how the app has undergone big changes since its inception. Sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy this episode of the Overland Journal podcast.
And a special thanks to Adrenaline Industries for their support of this week's podcast. Adrenaline is making some of the most exceptional expedition campers on the market, and they are made right here in the USA. Judd and his team of skilled craftsmen are building overland trucks based on heavy-duty American truck platforms, integrating comfortable composite living modules with high-clearance four-wheel drive. These trucks feature 43-inch tires, robust bumpers, winches, and a conversion to single rear wheels. For their expedition trucks, they are building on extreme duty industrial four-wheel drives like the BAE with 4 or 6-wheel drive, reserve payload capacity, and third world serviceability. All of this compatibility comes with one-on-one customer support and in-the-field training. Others take you far. Adrenaline Industries will take you further. Thanks again, Adrenaline Industries, for making this podcast possible.
Thank you so much for joining the Overland Journal podcast today. I am so excited to chat with you because I feel like iOverlander and your blog Life Remotely have been two things that have been present in my life since we began back in 2013, driving on the Pan Am Highway. So thank you so much for coming to...
I'm also so excited to be here, Ashley, and talk to you. That's the
Yay!
glory.
Good.
That's the glory to senior editor, Overland Journal. Awesome.
Fantastic stuff. Yeah, it's been quite a journey for both of us, and it's really, really fun to go back in time and chat about how things were and how they've progressed. Yeah, give us a little bit of a background on how you got into overlanding, and yeah, we'll just go from there.
Yeah, well, personally, I got into overlanding. I mean, I started as a backpack traveler in Europe, and that got boring, and then met my husband, and he is South African, so our first overlanding trip was actually in Africa in 2007. We got married, and then our second overland trip was also in Africa. We took a Ford Fiesta through Namibia, which is not a great idea, by the way. And then we kind of later on, we moved back to the States, and my husband said, or I had said, I really want to go to Patagonia. I really want to go visit South America. And my husband agreed. He said, yeah, we can do that, but only if we can drive there. Okay, challenge accepted. Let's drive the Pan American. And that was kind of that's our setup, how we started. That was, I think we went 2011 till 2013 from Seattle to Argentina.
It's so amazing. So we were following you when we started out on 2013, and your website, liferemotely.com, was one of the Bibles that we used all along the way. I remember downloading, there was a suggested packing list, and you and Cobus, right, your husband, were working while traveling back in.
Yep. And my brother was with us as well, Jared. So there's actually 3 of us.
That's right.
And we decided, it was so funny to think about this now because there was no Starlink. We did not even have a smartphone. I think we had the first gen iPhone with us, but we never turned it on because it was just too much of a hassle. We did everything with SIM cards in a USB stick. But we were freelance workers, all of us. So we just cut our client load down to work 10, 20 hours a week instead of 40. And we worked pretty much the whole way down and kind of decided, okay, there's a lot of information people don't have, and there's a lot of misinformation. And I think it's a lot better now. But back then, the book that we wrote, it was super cheeky. We titled it, "Don't Go There, It's Not Safe, You'll Die," and other more rational advice, because everybody kept saying, you can't go to South America, you'll die. And it's no, everybody does this. Lots of people do this. It's totally fine. We're going to go and we're going to work, because otherwise we're not going to be able to afford to go.
What were you doing as freelancers on the road? What type of work were you doing?
So I am a graphic designer. That's my background. So I just all types of corporate marketing, graphic design. My husband as well was graphic design, web design. He had a few clients, and actually at the time he was teaching for a local community college, so he was doing online courses. My brother is a software engineer, so he worked for a health company during the trip.
And you were in ground tents, all three of you, right? And
yes, ground tents for life.
Yes, I love it. What did you drive again?
A 97 4Runner. And
Right.
it's still our car, by the way. We're trying to buy a new car. It's totally impossible to upgrade. We're so in love with this car. It's in pieces.
It's just like the nostalgia of it, but also just the 4Runner is so solid that I'm impressed that you did it in ground tents the whole way and we're working. When
people talk about this, like, do you know what the coolest thing about a ground tent is? Like, you know exactly how many spiders are inside your space. That's what it's all about. It's all about bug control. I want to know what's living in my tent when I get in it.
That's really good advice. I love that. That's like a pro for the ground tent, because obviously rooftop tents are very popular and I love a good rooftop tent, but the spider situation and knowing what's going on in your tent, I like that.
And also like beer runs. Like realistically, I don't have to put my tent down if I need to go get more beer. Like
that's true. That's true.
Practicalities here.
Give me kind of an overview on what was working like. Like what was you were getting SIM cards, like how was Wi-Fi all the way down the Pan Am? Like what was that experience like between 2011 and 2013?
I remember like being on the road and thinking, wow, this is so much better than Africa. And at the time it was like, there's more internet here than there was 3 years ago in Africa. So we're doing pretty good. But yeah, it was an absolute nightmare. Like we hardly had, like buying data was so hard. It wasn't like everyone had it. And a lot of countries were like, you're a foreigner, we can't sell you a SIM card. And there was this circus that happened every time we crossed the border to find a SIM card, put data on it. I mean, how it's changed with, I see these people with Starlink. I'm like, oh my goodness, if we had that, we just would have changed everything. How many, like the quantity of energy that went into just find a place with Wi-Fi or, and I was doing graphic design. So it was like, I remember this project and it was this big trade show booth and the file was like 150 megs. I was like, I need internet that can upload this 150 meg file because this has to go to the printer tomorrow. We were just somewhere where it just didn't exist. And we ended up finding this little hole in the wall shop full of 13-year-old boys that were in some gaming thing. And like, we had to tell everyone in like, please, everybody just pause your games for 10 minutes so I can upload this file. It was impossible. Like, we did a lot of crazy stuff, but at the same time, I wouldn't have done it any other way. We would not have been able to do the trip if we weren't working. So when you put it that way, it's like, yeah, we did what we had to do to stay on the road.
Totally respect that. I want to shout out to your free ebook that you mentioned. Don't go there. It's not safe. You'll die. And other more rational advice for overlanding Mexico and Central America. Man, this was my favorite thing to reference for border crossings, especially. And it was pretty incredible because for Central America, I think it was the most helpful for us in terms of the steps that were required to go through each border crossing, because it was tricky. And you guys did such a good job of laying out, go to this random red building where you will find a printer and a man, and then go to this, little booth over here to get change or print something out or whatever. It was so invaluable to give you the confidence to kind of get an idea of what was going on to a certain extent. And
and iOverlander became the spin-off of that, because that book is now 10 years old, 11 years old, and horribly out of date. And like, to anybody that reads it, I'm sorry that it's not been updated. Go use iOverlander because it's now all wrong and all out of date. But yeah, that was the whole idea. Was like, come on, people, just come down here. It's cool. Central America's great. You'll love it. Don't be afraid.
Yes, yeah, it did a great trip, a great job in giving the step by step, which I think is so helpful for people to break it down into these steps, these little bites that take one at a time, and you can do it. And then by, I think it was Costa Rica or Panama, we're like, oh, we're starting to see the patterns of how it all worked. So it was fun. And then you also made expedition tongs and published a recipe book called Forks on the Road. Tell me a bit more about that.
Okay, so this is all my brother. He is just an amazing cook, and it's fantastic. We joke all the time that like we brought him along just to cook for us because and it's funny because when we started iOverlander, Sam was like, we should add a restaurant category. Sam's my partner in iOverlander. We'll talk about that more later, but he said, yeah, we should add a restaurant category, and I'm like, why? We just cook. And I was like, oh, that's not normal. We had my brother, who was an amazing cook, and my husband, Kobus, who is just loves to grill and made these, like this grill tongs thing is like everywhere in South Africa, but it doesn't exist in the US. And we just thought, okay, let's just make this book and make these tongs and see what happens. It's something to do, something fun, a life on the road and how to use Latin American ingredients and the cool stuff you can do while camping, like, baking bread and on a campfire and stuff like that. It was a big part of who we were, and a big part of our trip was sitting around a campground just making an amazing meal with local ingredients. And yeah, and it kind of the outcome at the end, we were going to update our Don't Go There, It's Not Safe, You'll Die book, but instead we wrote the cookbook because that was just way more fun.
Yes, fair. Do you have any favorite recipes from that cookbook?
Jeez, I still use it today for so many things. It's like the cover image is Faviola's white bean soup. That's one of my favorite recipes. But we learned from 6 weeks in Guatemala with it's just cooks in Central America, and the ingredients and the way they do it is like in the U.S. Like we just have no idea what Mexican food is. It's so much better in Mexico. There's so many good things in that book, though. Little things. And there's cheeky things, like we joke about Mike's Go Juice, which is like just take instant coffee and pour water in and shake it and drink it, which is awful. And please don't do it. But we've all been there. Like, I just need a kick because I got to cross a border today and it's 7 a.m. and I didn't sleep at all last night. And there's no hot water because the stove doesn't work. So give me some Go Juice.
You got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah.
So you guys wrapped up your Pan American trip, and then eventually, I don't know if this was in 2014, if that's right, but you headed back to Africa.
Yeah, we came back to the States and totally went through culture shock. Just, what are we doing? What are we doing next? Didn't have a plan. Just kind of came back, and we were living at my parents' house, trying to figure out where we were going to move to. Kobus was like, so we spent a decade in your continent. Can we go to mine? And I was like, yeah, cool, let's go. So we went to Africa, and I intended to stay a couple of years and stayed almost a decade.
Wow. My goodness. Where were you based out of?
So his family's in Johannesburg. So we sort of started there, and we ended up kind of settling down in George in the Western Cape for the better part of that time. We did a couple overlanding trips. We redid our honeymoon Namibia trip in a slightly more reasonable vehicle.
Fantastic. So you're back in Africa, and this idea of iOverlander comes up. How did this all come about?
So it actually started before we went to Africa. When we had come back from our trip, and we're sitting at my parents' house, and Sam shows up. Like, he just contacted us like, hey, I know you guys are back from your trip. We're just starting ours. Can we meet up? And we said, yeah, come over. Like, and we're just sitting on the deck drinking beers. And Sam says, so guys, look, how do you find campgrounds in Mexico? And we were just like, well, there's like this book, but it's not really up to date. And you could look at some blogs, and Google Maps isn't very good. But like, try these 40 things, and then sometimes you'll find a place to camp. And it's probably going to be closed, so maybe find 2 or 3. And Sam said, well, it sounds like we need to like consolidate the data. And I was like, well, I like spreadsheets, so that's cool. And he said, well, I'm an iPhone app developer. And I, kind of bells went off. Well, wait a minute, why aren't we doing this? And it's funny because Sam left and like nothing happened. We just kind of forgot the conversation. And then a couple months later, Sam actually got to Mexico, and he had posted on like the Facebook, like Pan Am Facebook, like, hey, is anybody interested in organizing some data, pulling all these camp lists together of everybody's and having one master sheet? And I said, I'll do it, but you can't access it through a spreadsheet. That's horrible. Build a way for people to access this data that's not staring at a Google sheet. Like,
right.
Nobody wants to do that. And so he said, okay. And I said, okay. And then we spent the next year building the foundations of iOverlander.
That is so awesome. I remember.
And I say we as like, it wasn't just Sam and I, right? Like we
Right.
pulled, like people jumped in, which was crazy that it Overlanders want to share information, and the way everybody did it on their blogs, that's what got us through the Pan Am, was just looking through. I mean, people 10 years ago that had posted every place they stayed, every mechanic they went to. Like, we've been searching through that and combing through it. So we had just done it and we knew the sources. And we reached out to all those people and said, hey, we're aggregating this data. Do we have permission to use yours? And like everybody said yes. Yes, do it. Yes, do it. And Sam had started building the structure, and I'll never forget this because he built this web app, and he's an iPhone app developer who moved into this world of web, this massive Ruby on Rails project. And he described it as drinking water through a fire hose. Like, it was, we didn't know what we were doing. We were just doing it, and like hoping not to drown in the process. And we really, really wanted to launch iOverlander. My goal was to have 2,000 places when we started. And we got to like 1,850. And I had one more list that was 300 spots. And I thought, yeah, this 300 is going to get us to 2,000. And we merged it in, and like 200 of them were duplicates.
No.
So we ended up launching with like 1,900 points. And it was like crushing to me. But like now it's like we're at 250,000 points. Did it really matter?
Yeah.
That was like 2014. Yeah, that was 10 years ago.
So Sam and Erica were traveling together as Song of the Road in 2013, and we traveled through Baja with them. And I remember looking up, this was before the launch of iOverlander. I was combing through blogs as you guys did, and one of those blogs was yours, looking for spots to camp for all of Mexico and Central America. And that was very time consuming, but it was really cool because Sam was working on it while we were camping with them. He was sitting in the camper, putting this together, probably messaging with you to put together the origins of the app. I believe it was ready when we were ready to go to South America in 2015. And that revolutionized the way that we traveled through the rest of Central and South America. And it really freed up so much time. I loved reading through blogs, I had my handful of go-tos, but it's so much easier to see it on a map and go through it all very quickly and see what do I need in terms of a campsite right now? And these are all the options. So yeah. So
and how has it changed? I think that was
right.
Like one of the first big discussions Sam and I had. And so funny because like, we didn't really have messaging. Like we just wrote each other emails that are like 5 pages long. Like like the essays that went back and forth about the simplest things. But we said, okay, it has to work offline. Like internet access is not prevalent.
Yes.
People need this and it has to work offline. And the second thing was that everything needs to be updatable. And that was the big problem with the blogs, is like campsites closed all the time or stopped allowing vehicles or stopped having Wi-Fi, which was like our nemesis. But yeah,
that is such an invaluable tool, and it's been so fun to see it change over time. What were some other priorities that you had when you were first putting it together? And I guess my follow-up question is, did you start emailing a bunch of people that you know? Like, how did you get everybody involved with crowdsourcing, like locations for that spreadsheet originally?
So initially, we just went to the people we knew, the bloggers that we knew, and then said, okay, look, we'll do all the work, but can we just take from your website your data and plug it in? And then we had a couple other people join us, because once those first 1,900 places, like that was the Pan American. And in the beginning, I was totally content to be like, no, let's just keep this North, Central, and South America. And Sam was like, well, why? Why wouldn't we do the world? Like, oh, good point. Guess we better just add all the other countries. And so then it became, okay, wait, there's a massive overlanding crowd in Europe and in Africa and, Central Asia. So a lot of people joined and said, hey, I have this list. Can you add it? Or we had a volunteer, Fabian, that joined us, and he just was like, I know more people, I know more places. Can I help you guys? And we're like, yeah, just you find the lists and we'll put them in. But that really only lasted maybe about a year. And then we got in the hands of enough people on the road where it was no longer worth it to bulk add lists because they were all duplicates.
Right.
Or predominantly duplicates. So we just I don't think Instagram was not a thing then. So it was really just Facebook. And Expedition Portal was, a huge part of this. There was a review and a post done, and the word just got out. We just sort of let it grow and started working on all the other problems that come with growth, really.
Yeah, tell me more about. So you got you and Sam founding it, and then you have contributors who have populated so many databases and added to the infrastructure. You have a moderator team. Tell me a bit about how the team has grown and what it looks like today.
So when it started, it was me and Sam and then a handful of contributors, like people like you that were beta testing and adding. And then contributors grew, and then we realized we need to moderate. There has to be a way to make sure there's not malicious stuff happening, illegal stuff happening, or just mistakes and bugs in the app, which was far more likely. So we built this system of tasks that, whenever somebody made a change, it made a task and we could review it. Or whenever the system detected a duplicate, it made a task and we could review it. And it's funny because we built this system that you could assign tasks to multiple moderators. And it probably went 5 years before we ever used that. There was only ever one person doing tasks, like me, for the first couple of years. And then we had another volunteer, Tony Lee, the world's grumpiest overlander, but he came and helped us, saved our butt for a couple of years. And then, we had, again, people just kept coming in, volunteers, Jan and Bjorn, two Dutch guys that also famous overlanders, came in and were helping Tony. And then we started picking up, and it was like, okay, one person can't do this anymore. So the team just sort of grew. And then we realized, well, crap, nobody ever wrote down what the criteria is to accept a new place. What's our rules here, guys? Mm-hmm. And so we spent this immense amount of time just discussing what do we allow and what don't we allow. And we built this criteria, which is the foundations of so much we do today. So that team, eventually we started using tasks again. And now we have a team of probably 20 moderators. And awesomely, they are all now paid, which is running on volunteer blood, sweat, and tears for a decade. To finally be able to say, to thank our moderators with cash is a great thing.
Yeah.
And our developer team, it was Sam forever. But then we started slowly getting volunteers in to help. And one of our big, massive problems we noticed kind of about 5 years in was that our initial iPhone, Android app is just built on a platform that kind of died. It's people are asking us hey, I want to help make your app better. What's it built in? Oh, it's built in Xamarin. And they're like, what the is Xamarin? Right, that's the correct answer. And it's dead. So we knew we have to rebuild this. We have to start from the ground up. So we brought on developers to help us. And now, finally we have income. So a little bit. So we've got a paid kind of developer team, which is awesome. And 10 years of tech debt to work through. But
right.
So now it's fantastic. We have a solid moderator team. We have a couple people helping us. Michaela, who's helping us with tech support, and social media, who's just the most amazing person. And several developers. So the team has gotten a lot bigger, but it's still just awesome people that love overlanding and just want to help people find a place to sleep at night.
And a special thanks to Onyx for their support of this week's podcast. Going further on your adventures is about having the right tools. The Onyx off-road app's intuitive maps make it easy to find trails and disperse camping. And their offline maps give you full GPS navigation capabilities, even without cell coverage. Personally, I use Onyx for every trip in North America because I always know who owns or manages the land that I'm traveling on. It also makes for a reliable track recorder, and I can filter the trails based on the four-wheel drive or motorcycle that I'm using. On my most recent trip in the Quartermaster, I used the Onyx to find trails near where I was staying in Joshua Tree. I used the difficulty rating and the elevation to determine which trails are best suited to the vehicle and the weather. Thanks again, Onyx, for your support of the Overland Journal podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say there's so much going on behind the scenes. Like when we just open up iOverlander and we're like, oh, I need a place to stay. What works for me? Oh, look at all these options. This is so great. But we never think of the people that are behind this big project that seems so, I don't know. I wouldn't say like a humble project because it's very helpful, and there's so much going on, and having to check in to those spots. And one thing I have seen in updates is like, is this spot an okay spot to sleep? Like, is it a legal place to sleep? Is it somewhere you should or shouldn't be sleep? Is it in a national park? Or, I'm assuming the moderators are the ones that are going through to see, and it can be tricky in some areas. So I'm assuming there's research involved in that. So tell me a bit more about that.
Awesome thing. I'm so glad you're bringing this up because we were horrible at this, and I apologize to our users and the environment for just being totally ignorant about the way iOverlander was. What essentially happened is our policy was always, okay, if a place is illegal, delete it. If a place is damaging the environment, delete it. But we didn't have the tools to detect these places.
Right.
And we didn't make it known, like, people, if you had an illegal place, we're going to delete it. And so we got in this vicious cycle where somebody would add a wild camp. It was then a week later to be marked illegal, and it would get deleted. And then the next week, somebody would come back and camp there again and add it back. So that's a stupid cycle that went on way too long. But we fixed it, and we went further than that. We wrote this responsibility pact, iOverlander.com/pact, which essentially is a commitment to all of you to say, we're done messing around. Like, we stand for places that respect local people, cultures, and environment. And if that place is not being respectful, it's gone. Mm-hmm. And also helps overlanders understand, like, hey, if you're camping at a spot and that environment feels fragile, like a meadow, this is the thing, like, if you're in this beautiful meadow, you want to share it with the world. Just imagine what it's going to be like if 10 more rigs show up there. Is it still going to be a beautiful meadow? And if the answer is no, close your app, enjoy the meadow. Don't add it to iOverlander. Please don't add it to iOverlander. We got to protect our world, and we got to protect these places. And a big part of that is don't put it in the app. Don't share it. It's like, it's okay. Let's make sure overlanding is here for everybody in the future. And so we're really building toward this, and our moderator team is really working a lot harder. We have a lot better tools to detect places that are illegal and flag them as such that we never had. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm glad to hear it. I think it's hard in the beginning, right? Because you don't know you're like, we just want to share this information with overlanders. And over time, I mean, this app has been out for over a decade now. You can't see into the future, so you don't know how popular this spot will get. And I like that. It's like putting the responsibility on the overland traveler as well, because I have heard, and I would say personally, like, I love using iOverlander. I don't use it all the time for every single spot that I stay. But there is, or was, this narrative that like, oh, iOverland is just like making it so everybody's funneling and doing the exact same thing down the Pan American Highway, and all of these spots are getting overcrowded. But
and my response to that is like, close the app.
Right.
That's cool.
Right.
Carry on.
Exactly. Yeah. So what you're turning it around and saying, you can take responsibility for where you camp and how you treat those places as well. So I like it.
And, well, I mean, it's shared. Like, I don't want to put this all on travelers, because we've got our responsibilities in this too, that I totally admit we spent a very long amount of time ignoring. And a lot of that was lack of resources. And we're fixing it. And we're working super hard at like just protecting everything. Not just the environment, respecting what locals say. Like, and probably hours every week just answering emails. Like national park rangers, the National Park Service for Tierra del Fuego was like emailing us like in Spanish, hey guys, this is totally illegal, get rid of this. Like, okay, sorry, like of course we want to protect national parks around the world, and just monitoring that it's an immense amount of work, but we are committed to doing whatever we have to do to get resources in there. And most travelers do it innocently. They don't add a spot knowing it's illegal. They just add it and they don't get caught, and then it's like, okay, we gotta work towards something better here.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I would say like 99.9% of us do it accidentally.
Yeah.
And you're in a place maybe you're not familiar with, or you don't understand, or you're not doing it intentionally, but working together as a community to make our impact better. So I love that. What are some ways that you guys are doing those things now? You're saying you have more resources now to be able to move in that direction.
So a couple different things that we've done. The biggest impact is adding a category that is overnight prohibited. So whenever a place is like, okay, you definitely cannot camp here, it is illegal, we add a pin that says it's illegal to camp here. It never goes away and everybody can see it. And we don't do that on not every single parking piece of private property in the world, but if it's a place where an overlander is likely to try and camp, like a national park, right? There's a lot of national parks, and some of them allow dispersed camping and some of them don't. So if they don't, we put a pin at the entrance of the park that says you can't, wild camping is illegal, established areas only. The other thing we do is we flag, our term is flag check-ins, but we review check-ins for keywords, like, to make sure, okay, is there, somebody writes no camping sign in a check-in, we get an alert that says, and it's another task, hey, is it illegal to camp here? Go review it. See, did someone see a no camping sign and forget to close the place? So there's a lot just to look for keywords that indicate to us, hey, this could be a problem. This place could be illegal.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm thinking of places in Europe as well where there are signs saying no camping allowed, or in Banff National Park, they're really strict about that over where we are.
We have Banff. Like Banff Rangers are like on our speed dial. but definitely working with national parks and rangers, and we now have a dedicated person on email all the time that's like, somebody writes about an illegal place, we got 24 hours to reply to them and get rid of it. Like, it's not a thing, well, there's nobody available to do emails this week, so it's gonna have to wait, like you can't find volunteers to reply to emails. It's a drag.
Yeah. And you're touching on something that I'd like to circle around to, because one of the things that has come up recently is monetization. And you've given a few examples already of how that monetization is helping make the app better and helping volunteers be compensated for the hours and hours they're putting in. So maybe if you could just share a little bit about the progression of the app, because it was free for a long time, and there's some changes that have happened in the last little while. So,
yeah, it's painful. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry about the money thing. Like, I know it hurts. It was free forever. I want it to be free forever. That was it. That was like, we never started to this to make money off of it, and we're not in it for that. But we hit a wall where, shut it down or find a way to make income. Honestly, Sam and I waffled there. Like, I am tired. He is tired. All our volunteers are got real jobs. And when you have the quantity of just outdated systems that we had, an app that could not be updated, it was start over.
Right.
It was we're just in this rock and a hard place. And it was well, so we could sell out. We could bring on a whole bunch of advertisers. We could allow owners to promote places. And this is a big debate we had. We could just let campgrounds promote their places. But then we thought, well, this is no longer an app by overlanders for overlanders. This is an app by campgrounds then. This is an app by whoever can pay us the most to promote. And we didn't want that. And we came to this point that the best thing is that overlanders contribute to the app, and we do as much as possible to keep a free version, but that there has to be some way and some incentive to upgrade. And So we built the new app, we launched the new app, and like all I can say is like, guys, we're working on it. We know the new app's not perfect. We know the pricing is like all over the place, and we're really working hard to fix it. But it had to happen. Like the other option was shut it down,
Right.
which I think would have been worse. But I don't know. Sometimes I come to my desk and I see the hate emails, and I'm like, maybe I just should have flipped that switch.
No, don't do it. But also, mental health is important. Yeah.
That's okay. I got a lot of coffee and a lot of long walks, and like people really, it's so, the dichotomy is just crazy. Like some days I just can't handle it. It's like I get 5 emails from just people saying, this is amazing. Thank you so much. Here's all this stuff. Could you please work on fixing these things? And then we get like scathing reviews. Like, how could you charge us? We did all this. And one other thing I'll say is when we launched, we pulled some lists of people who were like the biggest contributors. And it's like, I don't know, 3,500, 4,000 people, contributors, bloggers. Well, we call them blogs, users in iOverlander. And we emailed all these people and gave them free upgrades. Like, thank you for building us. Here's your free upgrade.
Right.
But like only like 25% of you have replied to that email. So like, if you
check your junk folder.
Check your email. It came from admin at iOverlander. If you don't see the email and you contributed a bunch of places, send us an email and we will go look you up. Like, we have gotten like these hate emails from people, and it's like, dudes, you have a free upgrade for life.
Right.
Just go check your email.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah.
And we are working very, very hard, because one thing that we don't do now that's a huge problem is people that are continuing to contribute. Like, absolutely. If you're on the road and you're regularly contributing, we shouldn't be charging you for the app. We totally get that. Like, when you're building us and you're building our data, yeah, you shouldn't be paying for an upgrade. But this system is really difficult to figure out, because the moment we say, hey, if you add 20 check-ins, you get a free upgrade, then everybody adds garbage. And we don't know how to deal with that. And so we are building this. We are working on rewarding people that contribute. It's a huge priority for me, as well as fixing and adjusting pricing. Like, I'm sorry, all of Europe, the prices they added VAT. And so like all the prices are like 20, 30% higher, and we have to go fix it. And we're working on it. That's what I can say. It's painful, but we just really got stuck between a rock and a hard place and had to rebuild so much. And we didn't want iOverlander to be run by advertisers or to be run by campgrounds. We wanted the income to come from Overlanders, so that Overlanders could continue to dictate what we should do and build.
Well, I wanted to say thank you for continuing to do what you do, and everybody involved with iOverlander. You know, we really appreciate you all. So check those junk messages, and Jessica and Sam and the whole team will continue to go through what I imagine is a giant to-do list. So
yeah,
like any app, right? Like any app,
yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah. But it's cool. I mean, we've done fixed more things and built more stuff in the last year than in, dare I say, in the last 10 years before that. It's awesome what we're doing. And the things that I just want to give everybody a peek, like, into our Discord chat, like the ideas. This guy, like last night, like 10 o'clock, he's just sent me an email. I was like, have you guys ever thought about adding routing? We could totally do this. It's so, like, look, it's all open source. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's on the list. Let's do it.
Amazing.
You know,
yeah.
Yeah.
So the latest version is iOverlander 2.
Yep.
Okay. Available in the App Store and Play Store. And is it a new app, or is it a kind of like a refresh of iOverlander?
It's a whole new app. So we essentially, on the App Store, Play Store now, there are 2 apps. There's iOverlander Legacy, which is the old app, still works, and you can keep using it. If you don't like the new app, that's cool. And the new app is iOverlander 2, which is grounds up rebuilt. It's the same functionality, but there's new stuff. There's favorites. The new app is like, the UI is available in Spanish and Portuguese to help all our friends in Central and South America.
Oh, wow.
Like Brazil, by the way, we love you, Brazil. I'm sorry we haven't had Portuguese support for a long time. Please keep adding your places. Do it in Portuguese. That's cool with us. There's so much. There's a lot of little stuff in there, like dark mode, just in case you want to look for a spot to camp and like not have blaring white light in your eyes at night.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of improvements on the new app, a way better UI, a lot of stuff that on the old app that is just really, really broken, and we can't fix the old app. And the old app, we're going to leave it there as long as we can, but there are things like this year, August, like Xamarin shut down like in May, and then the program we could work around program shut down August 31st. So that app we can't change it. We can't do anything with it. And there's going to be a point, just full disclosure for everybody out there, where that app is at either we have to shut it down or Google or Apple's going to pull it for us just for violating too many things. So eventually we will move all the way to iOverlander 2. We're hoping to get everything fixed before we have to do that, so it's less painful to transition, work through some of these big issues that we have. But new app does cool stuff. At least check it out and give it a run, and then, send us an email if you got feedback or you want things fixed. We're here, we're listening. It doesn't always happen right away, but, I believe in to-do lists. We get through it, and we have an awesome developer team that's just plugging away at stuff.
One of my favorite things to add is like where to get propane, abroad. I love that. I mean, I think it's so populated now. We'll add like special spots maybe to camp, but a lot of the stuff now that we're adding is like practical. The things that we are going, or the other one that we like to add is like long-term storage facilities. That's my other one that's like super favorite. If we've left the truck somewhere for a specific amount of time and they've just been awesome there. That stuff's not as easy to find. I mean, it's definitely findable, but to have it in the app is really helpful. So
yeah, that kind of stuff, especially it's funny because we really started with this idea of long distance international overlanders, right? Like Pan-American travelers. And one thing that's really funny is that kind of with COVID and even before COVID, like escalating housing prices, van life revolution took over. And so it's funny because 50% of our users are in the US. Like they're just traveling around in the US trying to find a place to camp that's not like $120 KOA.
Right.
And it's the dichotomy is quite funny because like if you add a place with showers and you are like trying to add it, like one of the options is bucket showers. Like,
yes,
everybody, we get these like, what the heck is a bucket shower? Like, oh, don't worry about it. Just go to Africa. You'll figure it out.
Oh, that's so great.
I also wanted to take a brief moment to thank all of you for listening to the Overland Journal podcast. By listening to this podcast and subscribing to the Overland Journal magazine, you're supporting our employee-owned and veteran-owned business. Impartial reviews and in-depth content like this would not be possible without your support. If you enjoy the podcast, I think you'd really love the print magazine as well. And 100% of that subscription price goes back into creating the content like you're listening to right now. And as a special thank you for your loyalty, we're giving 20% off any subscription. And that even includes our special lifetime subscription, which includes numerous lifetime-only benefits. You can go to overlandjournal.com and use the code OverlandPodcast at checkout. Again, that's code OverlandPodcast at checkout, and that'll give you 20% off. I sincerely appreciate your support.
So I bet you're seeing some spots popping up, in Africa and across the world. It sounds like, I can't remember what you said earlier, the amount of spots that have been added or that are in there right now.
50,000 about is where we're at.
Wow.
We are like all but 4 countries, I think. Would somebody just go add like the Vatican City as a tourist attraction so we can count that country? Like, I think, I know obviously you can't camp there, but all but like a few island countries, we have points. But some areas way better than others, like Australia. Just if you use our app in Australia, that's awesome. But there's better options there. Like WikiCamps is doing a great job. Use their stuff.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And Europe, a Park for Night is in Europe, and they also, if you're in a ground tent, maybe not, but if you're in like a small RV, they have awesome places. Like we aren't the only one out there, especially in the worldwide view.
Yeah, we use Park for Night in Europe a lot. Like sometimes I was like, I need a Park for Night break. Like I'm on this thing so often. It's like have a Park for Night hangover. I need a little break.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So right now we're at 308,000 places, but that's the total number that's been added. And the actual active number is far less because of duplicates and deleted places, which
Right.
244,000. So 60,000 places were either duplicates or deleted since we started, which is pretty like 20% of our database gone just out of updates. And that's like the corrections we get and the quantity of people making edits to places and what changes is it's insane how much places change all the time. Close, open, close, open.
Wow. What keeps you going? Like, why are you so passionate about sharing these places and keeping iOverlander running, and your commitment to getting through those negative emails? Obviously, the positive ones help, but what drives you to keep this whole thing running?
Well, like mostly espresso. If I'm honest. No, really, the world is going to be a better place if people leave their country. That's and that's a little bit iOverlander, but a lot me. Like, go see how the rest of the world lives. Go experience someplace new. And it doesn't even have to be leaving the country. Like, leave your state. Just go. You don't have to have a pile of money. You don't have to stay at the Ritz. You can do it with whatever you've got. It doesn't matter. I mean, take a 25-year-old forerunner and sleep in a ground tent. It's doable. Buy a good, like sleeping mat because the ground is hard. But we just want people to go explore the world, and we don't want that I don't have a place to sleep tonight to be what makes you stay home.
Right.
And Overlanders are this amazing community of people that are just caring and sharing, and they want to give information back and help the next person that's going to be there. And they just need a tool to do it. And when our tools break, that sharing breaks, and that sucks. Like, not that it's all us. Like, there's a million ways to share, and it's not all on our world. And that's the other thing that keeps me going is we have this tool in iOverlander to moderate images. Absolutely the best job at iOverlander is to open the images moderation page, which is like 100 images at a time, the most recent ones added. It is the most inspiring thing. Go look at like 100, and then you do that page, and then you get another 100 images, and it's around the world, and it's absolutely will take your breath away. The places people go and the things that are happening, and also the seriously weird stuff that please stop taking pictures of dirty toilets. It really, really ruins my day. Like your meditative moment. Why am I here? God, not another dirty toilet.
Oh gosh. I want to ask you too, one of the most hilarious things about any camping or overland app is like the weirdest camp spots that are put in there. Like there's one by like an abandoned playground or at a cemetery. What are some of the strangest spots or photos you've seen?
I should have put a call out to my team about this, because we have on our chat group, we have a channel that's just random, and people, whenever moderators find something weird, they put it on there. It's so much. There's just came out, it's like some type of palace or tourist area in the Middle East, and the whole building is shaped like a giant spider. So scary. Oh my god, this was just a few weeks ago. There's a place, I can't even think, there's so many weird things. Like the place, there's a toy store in La Paz, in Bolivia. No, it's in Uyuni. It's right before you go on the salt plans, where you can buy small figurines, like T-Rexes, so you can take those hilarious photos in the salt pan of like a T-Rex eating your car.
Oh, yes, yes.
Like that's it. Like, yes, this is the thing. It's super critical. We need a shopping category just for this point.
That is so good. I love the creativity there.
Yeah, well, and what Overlanders add, like, go through the other category. It's hilarious. I love that review. It's like, what? Why? And sometimes we see places and we're like, what is the importance of this place? And then we email the person, and there's this like 3-page story as to why you might need that. Like, okay, that's cool. It can stay there. Aww. Apparently that's a problem in that part of the world. We didn't know. Yep.
Very cool. Yeah. It's funny. We would joke with each other. Richard and I would be like, oh, there's another whatever abandoned hospital. Time to put it on iOverlander.
It's some creepy spot. And the funny thing is, we used to get a whole lot of abandoned buildings, and a lot of them we would delete. And then we realized that a lot of them were cyclists just trying to get out of the weather.
Right.
And it was like, okay, I have a car and a tent, and these people have like barely a tent and a bicycle. And so we had to totally rethink, okay, how do we better support cyclists? Because like we're living the posh life in our vehicle. But we did have to restrict it a bit to say, okay, you have to have permission for that abandoned building, because otherwise, yeah, there's definitely some weird stuff. There's different levels of I'm comfortable camping here, and we don't judge. Whatever you want to do, it's cool. Just as long as it's legal and, otherwise.
Bring me to one of your favorite memories or experiences while overlanding.
One of my most amazing moments in not just overlanding, but it leads to iOverlander as well, is we were in Peru and we were going from Cusco, I think it was Cusco, to over the border to Lake Titicaca. And the drive was like more than we wanted to do in a day, because like everybody in our car had like a 4-hour limit, and we just got grumpy. So it was like, let's just split this drive up. But there was nothing. There was no place to camp. It was totally unknown. And we had found like one blog from 10 years ago where people said, there's a really cool canyon here, check it out. And we thought, okay, let's check out that canyon. Maybe we can camp. And we went there, and it's absolutely stunning place. And we had met kind of a local guy that was there that had a herd of llamas he was raising. And it was funny because, he was Peruvian, and we're speaking Spanish as a second language. He's speaking Spanish as a second language. We had this hilarious conversation where we wanted to know, how many llamas do you have? And he kept trying to sell us a llama, telling us how much it cost. But it was this middle of nowhere place. There was no campground in sight, but it was a perfect place to pitch a tent, out of this world. And we never would have stopped there if this one blog hadn't said there's a canyon here. You never would have known. And what's really incredible is that we added that as a wild camp on iOverlander, and this farmer actually turned it into an established campground.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's not much, but now you have a garbage can, a toilet, and a palapa. And it's like everybody goes there. It's like you need a place to stop, and there's a stunning canyon. And here's a guy that was, trying to sell us a llama for whatever, I don't remember the Peruvian currency, 300 wing-wangs, who now has this other source of income, just letting people camp in his farm, in the middle of nowhere, which I love. I love that aspect of, it's not just about overlanders. It's also about bringing overlanders to these communities and giving these communities a way to support us.
That is a really good point. And I was going to say that we also witnessed that in Peru. There was one place where this guy had started a campground and more travelers were coming through. iOverlander put him on the map, but what he was able to do, similar to that situation you were just talking about, is he slowly started to upgrade. And eventually, he's adding Wi-Fi, he's adding better toilets. And you could tell he was just so stoked to have people from all over the world coming to his place and experiencing the scenery. And he would chat with everybody, and our way of giving back is to pay for those services. And so over time he can keep expanding and making his dream come true. So those are kind of the things that, so great. Like
and these are
warming the cockles of your heart to think about those things.
Yeah. And these are the connections that I think it just makes the world a better place, when you know the struggles of other people, and when you meet them and see the way they live and see their surroundings, and they get to know you. There is a connection there that makes everybody care about each other a little bit more. And I think that that's really, really powerful.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, Jessica, I have one more question for you before we wrap up.
Yeah.
And that is, what is your favorite book?
Ooh, you're killing me.
I'm stealing the question from Scott Brady, because he asks in his podcast episodes people what their favorite book or what their favorite books are. And it's a tough one.
It is a tough one. I'm going to take a second and think about it.
All right.
Get me to edit out all this silence while I meditate on this. Nope, I know what it is. I think my favorite book is On the Road by Jack Kerouac.
Classic.
That book just totally hit my life at the right time and kind of landed in my lap. And it was like, I mean, I guess that book is about running and fleeing, but it's also about travel. And it sort of opened a door, which, originally led me to Europe, but that was the stepping stone for everything else.
Beautiful.
And I think second one, can I have a second book, is Motorcycle Diaries.
Yeah.
That's another amazing book that is very, Pan Am related. I read that book on the Pan Am and thought, okay, this now I understand. It just was eye-opening to read it and to hear. Yeah.
Did you watch the movie? What are your thoughts?
I did. Math.
Oh no. Just start with the book first.
Yes. Yeah. And I always had this goal that my Spanish would be good enough that I could read the book in Spanish. And sadly, I never got there. I built iOverlander instead and gave up on my dreams of fluent Spanish.
Maybe one day. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. And thank you for sharing the behind the scenes of iOverlander. Where can we find you?
Like, you can't. I'm on iOverlander, and I guess I just want to reiterate, guys, like, iOverlander is here for Overlanders. So you have feedback, you have suggestions, you have ideas, support@ioverlander.com. Like, I don't read all of those emails, but they make it to me. Like, what people say, what real Overlanders on the road are saying and complaining about, like, it gets on the list. It gets done. We're not ignoring you. We are building, and now we're building faster than ever. So, keep us in the loop. I am not on social media because if I go on there, it takes away hours of my life that I could be fixing iOverlander stuff. So,
fair.
Forgive me for that. I am just hyper-focused on making this stuff better. And I sadly am not as reachable in this community as I want to be, but I am listening. My ear is to the ground, whatever you guys need.
Perfect. So visit iOverlander.com and iOverlander on Instagram. You can also check out liferemotely.com. There's quite an archive on there to learn more about you and your journey and everything. So thank you very much, Ashley. Oh, it's been a pleasure. Super appreciate it having you on the Overland Journal podcast.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much to all the Overland Journal podcast listeners for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will catch you later.